Welcome to our S&OP Ask the Expert series.
Doug, today's question is, why don't you call S&OP SIOP? You are clearly not putting the focus on the one thing we are really trying to manage in the process, inventory.
Wow, okay, so this is what should we call the process? And it's, I know I've gotten in some great discussions about this. Is it SIOP? Is it S&OP? Is it IBP? And I do fall on the side of saying it really should be sales and operations planning. And I'll give you a few reasons for that. But I will caveat all that by saying it really, in many ways, doesn't matter to me if you want to call it SIOP or S&OP. But I do think SIOP actually understates what you should be getting out of your S&OP process. And there's really two reasons for this. And I'll start with the one which is a little bit longer, and then I'll jump into the second afterwards, which is quite a short reason. So the first one to me is just because I don't put I in the name does not mean that it's not important. In fact, I do think the inventory plan is an important thing. It's an important output of the process because it is one of the buffers that we use between our demand and our supply, right? We use that inventory to supply at less than lead time. However, it's really only one of the buffers. We have inventory, we actually have lead time as a buffer, and we have something that is called upside flex as a buffer. All three of those are decisions out of the S&OP process. And so, yeah, it's by putting it into the name, we're kind of raising it above these other buffers. I mean, we could actually include them all, but I think it would be, let me see here, it would be SITUFOP. It's kind of a long acronym, pretty tough to kind of get through. So, yeah, that's part of the reason I don't think I would put inventory in that. Well, if you're not quite sure, though, about these other buffers, let me just give me a second. I'll kind of explain that. S&OP is about balancing demand and supply, right? The S and the O, which is sales and operations, demand and supply. And it's about how do we improve the predictability of both of those. And then really how do we make decisions around the buffers that we need to manage that uncertainty, the risk, and really how do we manage the volatility and the imbalances. And so, like I said, there's those three buffers. So first is inventory, which we kind of talked about, and most people understand in a make-to-stock environment, that is just the straight finished goods inventory we have in our plant. The second one to think about there is lead time. And I want you to be thinking about that like lead time to the customer. How long between when the customer places an order do you ship the order, right? And this lead time is actually a pretty powerful buffer or tool that you can use as part of S&OP. The customer expected lead time is really what is kind of set from the market standpoint, and it is going to be somewhat related to what your competitors are doing. And so you want to understand that customer expected lead time, and you want to understand that relative to what your supply chain lead time is. And so you can extend lead times to accommodate for what your supply chain lead times are. Or in some cases, you can say, I want to reduce lead time. And so I've got to figure out some buffering that I might do in order to reduce that lead time. What's important to understand with that decision and how you manage lead time is as you extend lead times out, you want to make sure you're applying promise dates to orders that align with that lead time because you're going to maintain your service levels even though you're extending the lead time. And that's a decision that's part of the S&OP process, a buffer that you can use. The other buffer is this idea of upside flex. And simply put, that's this idea of purposely planning for unused capacity and supply chain components to allow you to flex up to manage demand that comes in less than lead time. And really, this is a purposeful decision on how you do that. And it's going to be within that S&OP frozen zone. And you want to know what you can do and how long you can do it for, and without really causing all kinds of undue disruption to the organization. So It's really about managing those buffers. And by the way, there's more than one, not just inventory. The second reason that I use S&OP versus SIOP is I think SIOP actually ignores the most important word in S&OP, which is the word and. Sales and operations. I've already said it, balancing demand and supply. It's really about getting sales and operations together, assigning the ownership, the right accountability and responsibility for putting together the demand plans and the supply plans, right? And holding each side accountable for the accuracy of those plans so that you're putting together a balanced plan and then figuring out how do we manage the imbalances back to the buffers. So it is that and word that's really the most important part of that to bring the sales and the operations together. I've seen organizations who focus on SIOP where the I becomes the ownership of the operations in the organization, and sales is very passive in the process. That's not just because it's the way it's called, but it's one of the things, one of the dangers that I've seen as you go through this, through the process. So those are my two main reasons. One, I is only one of the buffers. You want to also think about upside flex and lead time. And the second reason is SIOP ignores the most important word in S&OP, which is the word and. At the end of the day, it's tomato, tomato, potato, potato, process, process. It's kind of it's all the same thing. Hopefully this has helped you think a little bit more about what really is part of the S&OP process. Thanks, and hopefully this was a good answer for you.